half hour dedicated to primetime business news. The International Monetary Fund has left South Africa's growth forecast for this year unchanged at just 0.1%. That's almost no growth, but at least it adds to the belief that South Africa at least will avoid negative growth and possibly a recession this year. The IMF has lowered its forecast down for next year from 1% to 0.8%. That is a blow after Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan said yesterday that South Africa may in fact grow by more than 1% next year, which will help us avoid a credit rating downgrade. Gordhan, meanwhile, has called the Hawks investigation mischief in the real sense, adding that it's not doing the country any favours. Speaking to SABC News in New York ahead of the South Africa Tomorrow Investor Conference, he said that everyone concerning the Hawks SARS investigation knows there's nothing to probe, and the sooner it's put to bed, the better for the country. Let's hand you over now to our correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who caught up with Minister Gordhan outside the venue of the investor conference in Manhattan just before it got underway a short while ago.
South Africa's Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan joining us straight off a flight across the Atlantic from London into New York for the South Africa Tomorrow Investor Conference. He joins me now. Minister, welcome back to New York. You were here in March on a similar investment trip. You're back here. Clearly, this is a matter of urgency.
Well, let's call it a matter of importance, because I think it's important for government to support the private sector and the trade unions in our endeavor to create A, investment prospects, B, through that investment grow our economy, and through the growth in our economy create more jobs and stability in the country. And of course that will help the fiscal side as well. So if we want more money for poor students who need subsidies for their fees, then we need to make sure that we have the economic growth that produces the tax revenue, which can help us do the things we need to actually do. And in South Africa, we don't have enough of our own savings, partly because of the structure of our socio-economic situation. So we rely on investors to come in and invest in the real economy, but also invest in our shares and government and corporate bonds.
At the beginning of a conference like this, we are seeing these scenes on Wits University's campus this morning, rubber bullets to disperse student crowds. That must be disconcerting for you as you head in here this morning.
Look, I think anywhere in the world, you're going to have young people who express themselves in a particular way. And what we've said as government very clearly is that we don't need that kind of violence. We have a solution which will meet the needs of the poor students and the so-called missing middle as well, families up to 600,000 rands income. And it's important that students who understand the calculations, who understand the trade-offs that we need between student fees being subsidized on the one hand, and housing and welfare and health and other issues being subsidized or paid for on the other hand, that they should be part of a constructive conversation. And maybe they have some brilliant ideas about where we can find money that we haven't thought about. But you can't do that by throwing stones and petrol bombs.
The Monetary Policy Review Committee of the Reserve Bank just last night out of Pretoria released its projections for the economy, the economic growth, 0.4% I think for 2016, 1.2% for 2017, and just 1.6% for 2018. And yet in London yesterday you made remarks that maybe the South African economy is bottoming out. Is that a message you're bringing here that the worst is over?
No, we're not getting into recession. We are above zero. Originally, a month or two ago, including the IMF or the World Bank said we're going to hit zero. And if we're looking upwards of 1%, good. And if we can increase confidence in our economy, investment in our economy, and this partnership that we're trying to develop, then there are better prospects as we go forward. But there's hard work that's required. There's tough decisions that are required. And there are also structural changes and transformation that is required. And I think if we work hard enough at it, as Labour, government and business, we can produce a different South Africa in the next few years.
Ratings agencies, though, talk about the negative outlook. They talk about a possible downgrade. S&P last month talked about political interference. That is obviously a cloud that continues to hang over. Speak about the investigation, the Hawks investigation, and how you see that playing out here in New York.
No, look, what I learned in London, talking to leading journalists and commentators, is that politics is a factor all over the world, and that it is infecting the situation in Britain, in the EU, in the United States. As we stand in the streets of New York, I mean, there's no better politics being played out anywhere in the world than what you see here at the moment and how it's going to turn out for the biggest economy in the world. The Hawks stuff is mischief in the real sense, and it's not doing South Africa any favor. This is not about me as an individual. This is about us as a country. Everyone concerned knows there's nothing to investigate. And the sooner they put this to bed, the better for the country and the better for all of us.
Some economists, Minister, and let me read this, they say the current account deficit is relatively large, growth is too slow, GDP per capita is declining, policy uncertainty has escalated over the last year, and that a rating downgrade seems more likely than not. How do you counter that argument from certain economists in South Africa?
Well, look, anybody can describe a reality and the pessimism around that reality. Our job is to recognize the reality and change it, and not moan about it and comment on it. So, as change agents within and outside of government, we need to understand that we want to look after the welfare of 55 million people, not just a few elites here and there. And in order to do that, what I said earlier needs to happen. Create a climate for both local and overseas investment. Clear up the policy uncertainty. This is not the first time we're talking about it. We as government have it as part of our 9-point plan as well. And invest in the potential or really dynamic parts of our economy, which is sections of manufacturing, sections of the oceans economy, tourism, which is quite an important area right now given our depreciated currency, and above all, start implementing projects like the infrastructure projects that we have in our pipeline. So I think if we all work hard enough, you can produce a very different South Africa. Who's
going to be in the room with you besides the South African contingent? Who are the US fund managers, the equity managers that you'll be talking to today?
There's a long list of them. So they're both investors in the real economy. In other words, people who will invest in factories or services or expanding of their existing plants in South Africa on the one hand. Others who demonstrate their confidence in our economy because they can make money from buying and selling shares. And yet others who believe that we're managing our fiscal situation well. I just met one of them now, who has $2 billion invested in South African bonds. Now, you can't laugh at that. If you want this gentleman to keep his money in South Africa on behalf of his investors, then we've got to convincing him that we've got a positive proposition. And currently, emerging markets are a good place.
Final question, Minister. Describe the medium to long-term economic outlook for South Africa. What are you seeing and what do you hope for after this conference?
Look, one option that everybody around the world is talking about is, let's call it the low growth trap. In other words, you'll remain between 1 and 1.5% or even 2% for the next 3, 4, 5 years. The other option is that for the next year or two, like the rest of the world, we'll be caught in that kind of range. But if we do the right things in 2 or 3 years' time, we could begin to hit the 3 or 4% again. And that's the optimism that needs to drive us.
Pravin Gordhan, thank you very much indeed, and good luck in the days and weeks ahead.
Thank you for having me.
South Africa's Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan speaking to us here on the streets of New York, attending, or I would say being the general in the room, if you will, of the South Africa Tomorrow Investor Conference that kicks underway in just a few moments.